Welcome to the York Daily Record Editorial Board. My name is Scott Fisher. I'm editorial page editor here. And we are here today with State Representative Seth Grove and Stan Saylor. Thank you for coming, taking the time to talk to us today. We're also here with our editorial board, so I'm just going to go down the line here and have them introduce yourself.
I'm Thorne McFarland. I'm the editorial assistant for the Hyperlocal and Community News.
Thank you.
George Sepik, Vice President for Audience Development.
Jim McClure, editor.
And Scott Fisher. Okay. Also, we all have a reporter here.
Yeah, Ed Mahan, reporter, not on the editorial board, but I'll be asking questions.
Okay. And what's your name and who are you?
Florence McColgan. I'm here to live tweet this.
All right, thanks. All right, so I understand that you wanted to talk to us about the property tax proposals. And so we'll kind of just let you jump in with that and ask questions as we go along, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Okay, great, thanks.
Well, earlier this year, well, actually right at the end of last year, a group of legislators was invited by Majority Leader Dave Reed to come together and work out and see if we can come to an agreement on some kind of a property tax issue. We have a huge group of individuals in the state, some who have no interest, some who want complete elimination, others who want some kind of a 50% or so elimination. The group is from all over the state, Northeast, Southwest, Southeast, and so on and so forth. So we had some new freshmen in the group as well, which brought some new blood, new ideas, I think. And so as they met and continued to meet, I really wasn't in the meetings. I had participated in past years, but I just thought, well, I was named new chairman of the House Education Committee, and I needed to focus on that. And as we moved forward, I was brought into the discussions about it and asked if I would be the prime sponsor and help move the bill through the House. In the development of it, I think we brought people who were very much supportive of House Bill 76, some call it Senate Bill 76, others who had sponsored bills in the past. And what they tried to do is take pieces of different bills and bring together something that they could all agree to. Ultimately, the group, there are people in the group, like I said, who want complete elimination, but feel it's time after 30-some years, 40 years, to get something through the House that could possibly pass the Senate and get to the governor's desk. And the group recognized the fact that Governor Wolf had brought forward a proposal. The disagreement with Governor Wolf was how he was distributing the dollars. And of course, as we talked, and I think Leader Reed and members of the tax group talked with House Democrats, there just was not enough support for the governor's proposal on the other side of the aisle for the way he was distributing the money. So we came up with a distribution figure that basically helps people like New York City and the Lancasters, but doesn't give them 100%. And balances out with making sure that all of the school districts in the state get at least 40% reduction in property taxes. As we went through the transition, we also had met with the governor and his staff, as well as Frank Dermody, the Democratic leader, and Jake Wheatley, who was chairman of the Finance Committee. And what we did is we added some changes. We added some additional dollars to the property tax rent rebate program, adding another $200 to the rebate, along with for the renters and the homeowners as well for seniors. So we did compromise a little bit, but as a whole, we felt our distribution plan was the key. We also brought in more dollars that were, I shouldn't say brought in more dollars. What we did is we made sure every dollar we brought in went back out to the homeowner, back out to the person who's contributing. Our plan is based upon a sales tax which goes toward a homestead, to be added to the gaming money that right now gives anybody in York County from maybe $400 in the city of York to somebody in suburban maybe $75 off their property taxes. So we added the sales tax money into that, and then with the PIT, that money went directly to everybody. That money went to the business community who are contributing to the PIT. 79% of our business community pays into the PIT, and of course the homeowners through a millage reduction. Now the millage reduction, and that's the real key here, is that a millage reduction means that even any future tax increases, let's say that your school district in particular is granted a 1.5% tax increase for next year. 1.5% of say 22 mills is a lot different than 1.5% of say 12 mills. And that is the real key here, is the way to control property taxes is to control future tax increases, first of all. So that is it. We also, there's a safety net in here that provides for times when there are recessions that you actually tap the homestead money to bring over to the PIT fund to make sure that we keep the millage unless there's a real devastating, like 2008 recession, thank you. So there's a real balance there to try and continue or control future property tax increases. And the great thing is, what I've taken notice over the years in our collections of taxes has been when our economy is going fairly well, average, not super fast growing, but just on the average, we grow in our revenues and sales and PIT somewhere between 2 and 3% a year. And sometimes a lot faster than that, even on average growth. It just depends. So what's great about that is, with the PIT growing in an average year, so you have an inflation rate of, say, 1.5%, but your revenue grows by 3%. That additional revenue above that 1.5% is then used to reduce the millage rate even further. So not just when this fully implemented, but in the future, you could see additional property tax decreases into the future of this property tax bill. So there is built in that it's continuing, that fund grows. It doesn't stay at the state. It continues to go back for millage reductions in each school district. So that's basically the gist of it. I think, some people have suggested that we put it back in a referendum to keep property taxes from going back up. That is not something that the governor nor the House Democratic Caucus was supportive of, and putting that in would have killed the bill in the House. We'll see what the Senate does. I think the challenge now is for the Senate to come up with a plan or to pass our plan that we have put forward. And I'll let Seth, if you want to kick in.
I would even phrase this bigger than property tax relief. It's really a change in financing of education. The state's taking a larger burden. It's going back through a dollar for dollar reduction back to property taxpayers and homeowners. It's for once guaranteeing money to school districts. Like right now, we're entering in June. We're entering budget time. How much money are school districts going to get? That's the question. Nobody knows. So right now, school districts are projecting how much they will see. I think the astute business managers are building in a $0 increase from the state. We allow them to actually it was Stan's bill, was that 2 years ago?
Yeah.
2 years ago? That allows an automatic reopener. So once the budget is passed, school districts can reopen their budget and allocate those dollars in. I think it's a bad way
Has
to...
anybody talked about changing that system where they have to make their budget before they know what they're getting? I mean,
Do you know why they changed in the first place?
No.
At one point, the state actually set, the school districts did it later than the state, but the state came back and said, we need to know how much school districts need, so we're going to have you do your budgets first, and then we'll do ours. I don't get it, but at least with Stan's proposal, it's dedicated money. So we actually do a certification in May. So as school districts are starting to build their budget, they'll actually know, at least for this portion of money, how much they will be getting to build it into their budgets moving forward. It's a great change. I think it's refreshing for school districts to actually come in and say, well, at least we're going to know a piece of what we're going to get ahead of time. They can track it. We do monthly reports of how the income tax and sales tax grows. So they'll get a report basically every single month of projections, how it's looking. So I like it because it's dedicated funding. And you go back for that, the back end stuff, because everybody's worried, you're going to raise my income tax, you're going to raise my sales tax. I don't want my property taxes to grow on top of that. And we did a very tough job. We weighed not allowing locals to raise revenue versus allowing them to raise revenue. Because if you can strip away the ability of local governments to do that, at the same time, they'll have local pressures where they may want to raise taxes if they need the local revenue for their spending habits, what they deem is important in their school district for spending. So what we basically did, and you look at Act 1. So Act 1 applied the index. It applied a broad range of exceptions. We closed a bulk of those exceptions. They're down to 4. So you have pensions, you have special ed, you have grandfathered debt, which there's only 7 school districts in the entire Commonwealth that are eligible for that. And then you have electoral debt, which is anything voters approve, obviously, they need to continue those increases in the out year. When this is fully implemented, pensions basically fall off because the pension spike has basically teetered out. So you're not going to really see any increases within the pension exception for the next 30 years. That's regardless if you do pension changes at all, you're still looking basically at the same playing field with the pension exception. Special ed was changed in 2005, so any additional money we give school districts in special ed gets subtracted from that. So the better job we fund special ed at the state level, it really takes away the ability of school districts to raise taxes because of them. I asked the IFO to actually try to analyze how much taxpayer savings were between Act 1 and Act 25. Very tough to do. They came back with between $500 million and $2 billion over 6 years in savings to taxpayers. That's online, so if you go to the IFO under their releases, you can pull up that letter. So within that framework of potential out-year increases, what we did was take that income tax revenue and basically any new additional dollars that school districts get after the full 2-year implementation, they have to subtract that from their Act 1 index. So it further limits their ability to raise taxes. One of the reasons we did that is if we're guaranteeing them money, they shouldn't have to raise taxes at the local level to cover that additional dollars we get them. And that's one pot of money. We still have basic ed, we still have the block grant, we still have special education funding, and those are other line items within the budget that we give school district increases over.
And I think the biggest question as legislators we get all the time is, well, why can't you get complete elimination? Or why can't you get a bill passed, for 30 years, 40 years now? And I think that this demonstrated exactly what the problems are. Here was a bill that was a compromise between the governor, House Democrats on some of the issues, and Republicans. And we've got roughly, I think, 75 Republicans and 30 Democrats to pass the bill. It's not a Republican-Democratic issue. It's about where you're from and whether you see it as an issue. I mean, when you go to Forest County and their average property tax bill for the average home that you would have here in York County, the same average home up there is paying $1,000. In Warren County, $1,500 for an average ranch home or an average two-story. So they just don't see the issue the same way. If you look at who voted against this, in most cases...
But don't senior citizens still suffer up there? I mean,
well, think about it. If you're a senior citizen and your property tax bill is $1,000 and you get $650 off of that through the property tax rent rebate, you're down to $350. Versus York County, where depending what school district you're in, your average property tax bill is $3,500 to $4,000, where $650 doesn't do a whole lot for you. And so that's where the whole problem comes into, is the way legislators. And then there's always legislators who just don't want to increase sales tax period or personal income taxes. And some of the arguments by some people is, well, I'm going to raise those taxes and it's going to come back. Well, I would like some of those people also to say, okay, we're going to vote to totally eliminate it, but they won't make that vote either. So it's like anything else. If you look at Democrats or Republicans who talk about eliminating or cutting property taxes and then look at votes that take place in Harrisburg, there's always a way to say no. Well, it didn't do enough, or I didn't like the way they were doing it. And that's what we hear all the time in Harrisburg. So I thought by what the 30 members did in coming together and trying to put the package together, then with Dave Reed's leadership and others who pulled together and met with the governor and Democratic leaders, we were at least able to kind of, as I say, throw the ball into the Senate and say, now, if you don't like our plan, if you're not going to pass our plan, you need to send us something back. Because this isn't the first time that we have passed a property tax bill that cuts property taxes by 50% on the average to the Senate. So I think the onus is on the Senate, and I think they will act. But I do think that it's important that, they worked on pensions, got it over to us, we got property taxes over to them. So I think now it's going to be, if the Senate comes back with a bill that says we're completely eliminating property taxes, I'll be very happy. But I want a bill that at least does as much as we did in the House.
But that completely eliminating property, that doesn't factor the Wolf administration in there, but they're not going to really go for something.
Yeah, I think the governor's on record that elimination plan he vetoes. I don't think we have veto override majorities on that topic to really do that. So I think ultimately he took elimination off the table. I know within the House, as far as votes, we've never had the votes for elimination. We put up the plan 4 times. It's been voted down every single time. Even through this process, we did a whip count of House Republicans, and we're still at the same vote count we were last session. And, you know, we have 22 new House Republican members and stuff, but it's a numbers game. You know, numbers aren't there for full elimination. This gets you closer to that. You know, $14 billion is a lot of money. I can't tell you how much money that is conceptually. I mean, it is.
And we're hearing confusions out there too. I mean, like I think I see it was I think the Daily Record where a woman wrote in about how this is going to hurt senior citizens. Well, she's talking about the governor's proposal where he taxed nursing homes and daycares and diapers and caskets and everything else. You know, it just shows how much people don't pay as close of attention to what it really does. And in all honesty, I understand that because property taxes is not a simple issue. You know, when most people look at their property tax bill they get from the school, or even for the county and township, they just don't understand it. They see an assessment amount on here, they see a homestead thing on here, and it's like just so many different things, and people don't understand how that is really arrived at. So I think that's another complication why there's probably a number of members of the House and Senate who couldn't tell you how property taxes are arrived at.
Can we go over some of the key differences between your proposal and the Wolf proposal?
Sure.
So essentially, yours is no new revenue, and versus Wolf wants to raise a lot more revenue for schools. Why don't you want to increase funding for schools?
Well, it's not that I don't want to increase funding for schools. The key is that we need a new basic education funding formula. York and the Lancasters and the Bucks counties and Chester counties have been suffering for years for a funding formula that's very unfair. I mean, when you've got a school district like Altoona School District, and I point to them all the time because they're a perfect example of what's wrong with the system, is you got Altoona City bankrupt. You got the Altoona City School District who has a $50 million surplus, and every year when it gets its checks from the state of Pennsylvania, puts $1 million back into their reserve account. So, you know, it just shows how unbalanced the education funding is under the current formula. So we want to fix that as well. If we're able to get property tax reform passed, pensions repassed, as well as a basic education funding formula, we think people in York County and most of the state are going to do rather well. But you got to fund everything in a proper manner. You can't solve the whole school funding issue by just quote unquote fixing one thing.
What's the status of the commission that was studying the formula?
The commission is continuing to meet. We have a meeting next week again. Our goal is to be able to pass one as part of our new budget.
As part of the budget process?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, interesting.
That was up to your
exciting.
committee first, right?
Go through my committee, most likely, yes.
Yeah. And there is a significant difference between Wolf's plan and what we put up. His drives money solely, he tries to fund homeowners through homestead first. And the problem with that is you're basically taking business taxes and shifting them over to the homeowners. Instead of that, we are focusing on, you know, the PIT 2 millage rate. So those businesses do see property tax relief within there, and it's holistic. You know, at one time it was just seniors talking about property taxes, then it came to homeowners. Now it's a comprehensive body of individuals between business owners and regular citizens who are asking for relief on their property tax end. His is solely focused on PIT, and out of the $2.4 billion he's projected to collect in PIT increase this fiscal year, 2.1 is going to go into the property tax reduction fund. The other $300 million is going to go into the general fund for additional spending. All the sales tax money, the increase in the expansion under Wolf, is a tax increase. That does not go to property taxes at all. That's just general fund spending.
And remember, the other thing that you got to remember, it runs me back to the Rendell years when Ed Rendell said, I'm going to give you property tax relief, but we got to approve casinos, and we're going to put more money into education. Well, the only additional real major money that went into education was the stimulus money, and more importantly, nobody got property tax relief from the casinos. And the thing is that
a little bit, didn't we?
Yeah, $600.
$75 if you're in Spring Garden, and $130 if you're in Redline. If you're the average senior citizen, your property tax bill is $3,500, and you get $130 in Redline off your property bill, you didn't really get any relief. And I think that's kind of how the governor's proposal was put together. Is, well, I'm going to give you property tax relief, but I'm going to keep some of the money for more spending. And when he did that, a lot of that money that he's keeping isn't going to education. And that's the other thing that's missing here. Everybody talks about, well, the governor's thoughts about increasing education funding. We're all for additional education funding if it's done fairly and done the right way. But a lot of the money the governor's raising is not going to education. It's going to a lot of other places. So, you know, that's something that when I talk to my colleagues across the aisle, again, there is not a lot of support. If you were to put the governor's proposal up tomorrow, and you've got 83 Democrats, I think, right now in the House of Representatives, you'd be lucky to get 40 Democrats to vote for his proposal. So that's where I think it's going to be a key. The governor ran saying, I'm going to work across party lines. It's going to key for him to work with his own party to be able to find the support. If you can't get your own party behind your proposal, you're not going to get Republicans behind your proposal, because that's just, you know, something that Rendell was able to do and other governors have been able to do, is rally their own party to support him. So that's why, you know, I'm pleased. Like I said, I want to give Governor Wolf credit because he did start this debate about property taxes. We just disagreed how he's distributing and the fact that he was keeping some of those dollars.
So a key difference in the way your sort of relief is distributed is a lot of his goes to urban centers like York City and so forth, which a lot of people would argue would be transformational for York City. You know, people would buy houses there. You know, people would invest in the city. Why don't you want to? Why can't you see that might be a thing that would help?
Well, first of all, you couldn't get the votes. Democrats won't vote for that. So why, you know, you get Kevin Travers to vote for it, Mike Sterling of Lancaster, but you're not going to get the Democrats across the rest of the state to vote for that.
Why not?
And because they don't get any reason. How do you walk back home and say, I gave York City or Lancaster City and Philadelphia all this money, and I brought you 15% back home? That doesn't work. That's been the argument in the fight in the legislature forever, has been about how much money Philadelphia takes home. When you really want to start looking at education funding, Philadelphia is way overfunded compared to York City and Lancaster City education. And that's been an argument I've been making for years, is the governor's proposal sends a ton of money, way more than he's sending to York City as far as on the balance sheets. That, and again, when you look across the board at the percentage and things that he's doing, it's all angled to Pittsburgh and Philly, not to the York, the Lancasters, the Readings, and the Scrantons. Yeah, he sends a lot of money into York, but York is still shortchanged overall. And our proposal helps York City. I think a 70% cut in property tax in the city of York is a major benefit that Republicans have put out there.
But yours seems to help Redline and West Shore more than
Well,
it helps York City.
Why would it help more? York City gets 70% and Redline gets 43%. How is that a difference?
Did you put the
Yeah, I think the numbers
there?
I'm looking at here, it's like 16 million for York City, and it's like a little bit more than 16 million for West Shore for total funding.
Oh, West Shore is a huge school district.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
talking about a huge school district there. That's not some small school district. That's a 2-county school district. You want to compare York City, you got to compare it to
So
other school
here's percentages. You have dollar factors and then you have percentages, and they tell significantly different stories. So you're looking at York City is getting a 29% reduction in their millage rate. Homeowners are going to get a 23% reduction in homestead, farmstead. West Shore is going to get a 20% reduction in their millage rate, and then a 15% reduction in their homestead. So while you can compare $16 million with $16 million, it's significant more relief for York City School District than West Shore School District. It's basically a numbers game. I mean, I think that was done last year under Corbett's budget, where they tried to compare that, York City got, maybe a percent less money than like York Suburban, percentage-wise, but if you look at like total dollar values, York City ended up getting more money than them. So I think it's a fair distribution. Members of the General Assembly aren't going to take their taxpayers' dollars and shift it elsewhere. And that's what Wolf's budget does. And I can tell you from conversations that the goal, his plan was to shift that money and take care of those third-class cities. Good for them. It was a was a shift of money.
But don't they need the help? I mean, they're carrying that burden of all that tax exempt property.
Well, that's-
the
But
churches, the
did you
social services,
did you
and
look
so
at their
on.
tax exempt property? How much is actually owned by the city government
Yeah.
itself through their economic development wings?
You need to look at their tax exempt properties and who owns more of them. The city of York has a ton of, they own, and I mean housing projects. I mean, I can show you on tax records. You can go into their tax records and look at what Stan Saylor bought a house in the city of York. 3 months later, 6 months later, I sell it to the city for $10,000 more than I paid for it. They have a ton of property sitting that they have bought over the many years through their redevelopment authority that is just sitting there undeveloped that they own. It's not taxable. Why, when you have 400 or 500 properties that you own as a city, why would you have it until you're ready to redevelop it? It is just unbelievable what they have done to themselves over the years. I'm not talking about the current administration. I'm talking about past administrations. Then you take a look. Fixing York City's problem is not just about property taxes, but you can fix York City's property tax partially by putting a good basic education funding formula together. Remember, the city of York gets no real poverty money, yet Philadelphia does. Now, when you look at Philadelphia and you compare York County to Philadelphia, you understand something. Only Central York, Dallastown, and York Suburban is wealthier than the city of Philadelphia. Philadelphia is not a poor city. It's like New York City. It's not a poor city. It's a very wealthy city that we have been led to believe is a poor city. We forget, Philadelphia is corporate headquarters for major corporations. It's their tax effort. They have failed to tax their constituents the same way that York County school districts have taxed their residents. When you can own an $800,000 two-bedroom condo in Philly and pay $4,300, and in York County you can have a ranch home with 3 bedrooms in it and pay $4,800 to $5,000 here, and even higher in some cases. So you got to understand, there's a real, apologies, you got to understand there's a real difference in what, when you got to look at the dollar amounts. Philadelphia, comparatively to the city of York, is way overfunded right now. And the only way to fix that is new funding, education funding. If we put a poverty measure in for York City, they will see additional state dollars through that way, which will also help them with property taxes. So I've been saying for years York City has been getting short funds, just as the rest of York County has been. City doesn't get the poverty. Philadelphia gets a huge poverty amount of money. And if you were to look at some of the line items that we finally have started to eliminate, Philadelphia was getting money for everything you could think of in the world. So this, to look at York City, its problems are not just one solution. It's a new education funding formula, it's property tax relief, which we focus at 70%, and at the same time, it's also having a redevelopment, getting the state to invest in redevelopment here. You know, we've been fighting to get a CRIZ here as well, just as Lancaster and now Bethlehem has. So, you know, there's a multitude of things we have to do to fix the city. But when you look at things, York City has got to change the way it does business as well. You know, I've talked about the city school districts in the past, and that continues. It's about management.
Let's talk about that. And do you want to shift to that?
That's up to you.
What did you think of Carol Saylor's sort of? I'm not sure I totally understand all the details of the program, but the broad outlines seem to be there. Sort of short-term goals and try to reach those goals. What were your thoughts? Did you?
Well, I have real concerns. I still have concerns. I interviewed Carolyn Saylor with the secretary there and superintendent there, and Mayor Bracey was there. Carolyn Saylor said to me that day in front of everybody else that she didn't want the job she just took. She says, I don't want to be in charge. That bothers me. Carolyn's a really good person, nothing against her, but she said, I'm retired, I want to do certain things. I'm retired, I want to do the things I have fun with. So I think what will be the tell is between now and the start of school as to whether the city of York can put together a curriculum, a real curriculum that everybody can buy into. I mean, when you meet with the teachers in the city of York, they will tell you, whether it's a math teacher or whatever, they change how they're teaching math, sometimes 2 or 3 times within the same school year. You can't, that's not a curriculum. You have to have consistency, particularly for kids in the city of York or Lancaster or Scranton, wherever you're at. You cannot keep changing how you teach a subject within the same school year. So when I talked to 20 teachers and I talked about the problems they were facing, the comment I got from the teachers in York City were this: give us $20 million, Stan, and unless we have a curriculum, it will go nowhere. It will not help the children in the city of York. That was a big statement to me. It's because it's not about the dollars in the city, which they truly need. They need more dollars. But it's got to be focused on the areas of making sure that they have a curriculum that's driven, understanding and dealing with the problems that the kids in the city face. I mean, there's a lot of children have just a mom or a dad at home. That's all they have. There are other children in that school system who are moving to 4 or 5 elementary schools in the city of York in the same school year. So the dollars, that school board, that superintendent, and I like the current superintendent, I think he's a good guy, but they have got to develop a program that fits their school district and makes it work. Just like anybody in Dover or Red Line or any other school district. Every school district is different. Some have a lot of commercial and a lot of wealth, like Central York's or Suburban. Others, like Red Line, we're the 3rd poorest in the county. You got to find a way to make sure what you're dealing with is dealing with the students you're having brought in every day. The curriculum has to match up. The social programs and the things that you're doing have got to fit the needs of your particular school district. And that's the other thing that we have to do. The federal government and the state government has got to get out of trying to micromanage, in Pennsylvania, 500 school districts. We need to say to York City or Red Line and anybody else out there, we want good test results from you. We want to make sure that you're giving kids a world-class education. But sitting down and saying York City has the same problems or has to have a curriculum designed the same way as Red Lion doesn't work. We know that York City has a lot more poverty, a lot more single moms than Red Lion has. And Red Lion is dealing with different things than Central York is dealing with. So those are things that you're going to be seeing out of the Education Committee. We're coming out with mandate waivers that are going to be coming through. So I think the problem in education has been, in this country, has been we're trying to sit down and manage, and in this case, Pennsylvania has 500 school districts. They're all different, economically, socially, you know, it's such a huge thing. I think that we are trying to test our way. You know, we have more tests. Do we need more tests? I think we need testing to make sure where we're going. But you got to make sure you're using the test to help the students, and we're not. We're just simply testing to get say, oh, well, it's not doing good here. Okay, file them away. Why are we not using those tests to make sure that those children who are scoring low are not getting additional help to make sure that the next time they're tested?
Well, couldn't you argue that the whole CRO program is, I mean, that was kind of triggered as partially by finances, but also by just test scores. So that's an effort to improve the schools, right, to bring in outsiders to try to help fix it.
It is, and my hope is that Carolyn Saylor will do a good job in there. But I do have concerns yet, because I want to see what they do between now and August, when, as from my point of view, is they're either going to match up, or I'm going to be asking this. We're going to put probably something in the budget that says they don't get additional money until they meet certain criteria. Because I am not going to take taxpayers' money and give it to a mismanaged school district. Chester Upland's another example. I mean, we're here in York, so we're kind of picking on York, but think of Chester Upland. Chester Upland had teachers who were dead, some who had never taught in a school district getting paid. Nobody went to jail. There was criminal activity. Nobody's holding any of these people accountable. We keep just sending more money. Chester Upland got millions, $50 million more over the last several years, and nothing has changed in testing or anything else. And I guess my argument, Scott, is that there are a multitude of things that really affect, whether it's property taxes and also education. Dollars are part of that. But it's also about management. You know, I don't know, some people say, well, schools aren't a business, and I would agree with that. But at the same time, you can't have dollars being spent on frivolous things. We know York City did. We know what happened in Chester Upland with the misappropriation of dollars there. But nobody's being held accountable, you know. And I guess what I get fired up about is these kids deserve better than that. You know, people say to me, well, how can that be? How can the school board not care about kids? It's not that I don't think the York City School Board doesn't care about kids. But somebody has got to be held ultimately responsible. We're school board president, past superintendents. I'm not going to point the finger at any one person. But the bottom line comes down to is you and I, as taxpayers, deserve better when we're sending millions of dollars into school district than to have kids come out who can't read and write. And York City, overall, the kids who graduate from York City are good kids. but they could do a lot better. And I'm going to be working very much with the superintendent to try and partner with some of our higher education. You know, Trinity United Church of Christ in downtown York is working, I think, 12 Saturdays out of the year. They're helping kids with college prep stuff, getting kids to understand what they need to do to get ready to go to college. Programs like that the community can offer. So that's how we solve some of those problems in the city. I don't think it's one fell swoop.
Okay.
A good comparison, the company that the department contracted with is currently in Portland, Oregon School District.
Studies the city's district?
Yes, they've been in there since
Think about that.
2/3.
So she's getting paid $140-some thousand, and she's bringing a consultant in to study the school and take the advice. Do we need both?
So, so Portland School District, the same company has been analyzing it since 2013. Same exact setup. They're going to come in, they're going to do interviews with administration, they're going to do focus groups with community, the whole 9 yards. I don't know that there's any significant change, and when we met with the secretary, he had a report from this company on Portland School District. It was dated 2013. I asked point blank, this is 2013, we're now 2015. So you've had, I'll say, a year and a half maybe, of this company in Portland. What are the results so far? I mean, that's a year and a half of work. I mean, you can move students a lot if you have a good game plan. You can academically move them over a year and a half of content within a school year if you're good. They didn't have any data. They don't know how Portland is faring from that 2013 report. And I asked, what's your game plan for York City? When are we going to see academic achievement? When are we going to see a turnaround? If you get this effective this coming school year in the fall, what's your time frame? Maybe 2 to 3 years. There's some issues. It's like we're starting over from scratch instead of really focusing on how to drive this home in a more effective manner. It's still 2 generations of kids. You're still losing within that time frame.
Don't you kind of run into the same issues with some of the charter school proposals too, though? I mean, a lot of them, some of them have been successful, most of them haven't been successful.
I would say most of them haven't been successful. I'd say, and again, I don't want to quote statistics, so I'd have to have them in front of me, but I'd say at least half of them are successful, and they need to be accountable too. Don't get me wrong. We need to hold them and public schools accountable for kids. And we've, as we've seen here in York City, we closed New Hope. Dave Meckley pushed to close that school because it wasn't performing. And I think that's the thing here that misses. We don't need a study of York City schools. We know what's wrong with York City schools. I mean, it's not an issue. Dave Meckley had a citizens advisory group. They came up with 3 different recommendations, basically, Dave did. And then he was removed, and now we're going to hire a company to do a study. Dave worked with the people in York City, with curriculum and everything else, how to fix it. And he was left go to bring in a company. And that company has no record of any success. It's just, in my personal opinion, another political game to delay fixing York City. It's a game. And that's a shame because kids shouldn't be a part of the game. This isn't about Democrats or Republicans. This system should already be on its way to being fixed. The city school district had 3 options and turned down all 3. What is this company going to recommend? What can it recommend that Dave Meckley hasn't already proposed? It's about having a curriculum. It's about doing and spending the dollars. He brought them back financially, which, was how many million were they in debt and deficit spending. And he had designed through a parents advisory and all these people in the community who were part of his advisory group. And now we have another advisory group to the mayor. And we're sitting here saying, this is going to fix it. How long do the kids of the city have to suffer before somebody says it's time to quit playing politics with this and get this school having a curriculum? If Carolyn Saylor isn't the person to put a curriculum on then, having been a superintendent in at least 2 other school districts, why are we hiring a company? She's been successful as a superintendent in Fairfield and Adams County, and I think it's Manheim Central over there. So if she's not good enough to do it, then don't put her on the job. I think she can do it if she wants to do it. But spending money, again, we're just throwing dollars out the door, and the kids aren't benefited. Studying this issue doesn't need study. We know what the problem is. It is the curriculum. And the city, of course, needs more dollars. And the governor has got to understand, studying this school district along with, I think he's going to study about 5 to 10 others at least, is just wasting state dollars. That we don't need studies. look, we don't have, out of 14 school districts in York County, 13 are successful. What are they doing that the city of York is not doing? Okay? Now, the difference for the city is they have poverty. So we need to have additional programs to fix that. And if you talk to the teachers in York City, if you talk to middle-level administrators, they'll tell you the programs they need. They'll tell you they need some social workers. They need some mental health counselors. So this is not some thing that, you know, is miraculously needs to be studied. We know what it needs. We know what other school districts like Lancaster City has been successful. So why do we need to study this one? You know, that's my whole thing is, Lancaster City may not be a shining star compared to, say, a Central York, but they're doing fairly good. Why not implement the same things they did in Lancaster, make sure it's successful in York County? And we want to sit here and spend more money and let these kids spend another year, 2 years, 3 years not getting a good quality education. And they deserve better than that. Quit paying politics with children and do it. I'm fine with putting more money in the city. But this playing politics because of who gives you campaign donations is just absurd.
So circling back to with property taxes, the city government and everything, when I look at governor's plan on property taxes and trying to fix the city, it works all together. So he basically wants to alleviate the school property tax burden off York City residents. If you talk to the mayor, the finance people of the city government, they're artificially capped. They can't raise their property taxes because they're capped by the city. It's a suppressing effect on them. Well, if you unleash that cap, the city government's going to then raise its property taxes up.
That concern.
Yeah.
I asked Katie McGinty
Yeah.
that she was here this morning to
Yeah.
talk to us about these issues, and we asked her about that.
Yeah. That's what's going to happen, especially when you have, and again, I'll get on my municipal pension bandwagon here, it's the driving factor. They're going to do it and they're going to fund their pensions. That's why they didn't do a property, that's why they went to the commuter tax, the earned income tax increase versus a property tax increase, because it's artificially capped. They have room to do an earned income tax increase, but not really on the property taxes. That's what I see the direction going. Instead of trying to fix the underlying problems, like let's fix the pension issue. I mean, we got an auditor general that's been sounding the bell, has reports, and it's provided there. You know, I love the fact that Eugene is tasked to do that. I love the fact that he's basically, I know the problem, we don't need a task force, we're looking for solutions. That's leadership. You know, I'm excited about that. I probably talk to Eugene probably every other day, municipal pension reform. I think it's going to be good moving forward, but it's the underlying problems you got to fix. It's not a silver bullet theory just to throw money at a problem. You got to fix those underlying problems. You know, we're trying to get last in, first out removal of that for teacher contracts when you're furloughing. It's a direct cause of York City. You know, tough economic times, they had to get rid of programs because that's the only way to reduce costs for personnel. It's reducing programs. So you're getting rid of arts, you're getting rid of music, you're getting rid of things that show success in education if you keep those programs alive, because you have to get rid of programs instead of focusing on personnel.
Don't you basically sort of guarantee that you're going to jettison the more experienced teachers because they have the higher salaries?
No, because the bill doesn't allow you to do anything with salary. It's solely based on the teacher effectiveness scores. So you start at the bottom. And even if you tie, let's say you get rid of the bottom chunk of teachers and you have two teachers that have the exact same score, then it's predicated on seniority. So you even really don't get rid of seniority. You're just building in the effectiveness of that teacher. And if in fact your most successful, best teachers are your most highest salaried and most senior, they're going to stay.
But how does that system work? Can it be gamed? I mean, can you...
Well, I think let's be honest. I mean, you can game. Certain people are going to find a way to game it. But if you're a principal or a superintendent, you're going to want your best, because your test scores also are something you want to be proud of and be able to brag about. Mm-hmm. So getting rid of teachers who are very effective is not a smart thing to do. What it does allow is a superintendent and a school board to better manage the programs they have. Instead of cutting a program that's very successful and saying, well, you know what, I got to get rid of that program because I can't lay off the teachers over here. This is a newer program, all the teachers here are less in seniority or whatever it may be, or laying off. So programs are dependent on being able to manage. And you know, here at this company, you can sit here and make the same decisions. You have the right here to lay off anybody you want. Any one of your reporters. You don't lay off based on seniority, I'm assuming. If you do, I mean...
Well, we do have a union.
Well, I know you have a union, but, you know, it just comes down to is most companies can lay off based upon, you know, when I had my company, I laid off basically those who I didn't need. Okay, it wasn't always on seniority. You know, it was what I needed to continue operating my company and hopefully rehiring those back. But, you know, you go through ups and downs. So that's what the school districts need. They need the ability to manage their school districts. Like I said, this whole mandate that the federal government and the state has on these school districts has not just affected York City, it affects Dallastown. You can talk to the school board in Dallastown. They've had to eliminate programs rather than eliminate certain teachers that they think they probably should have cut because of the whole seniority system. You know, last in, first out.
And we're one of only 7 states that still has it. And then we had a court case and stuff. But I mean, it all plays
Can I jump in real
together.
quick on property tax?
Yep.
Just, what have you heard from the administration in terms of what areas they might be willing to compromise? The big differences are the sales tax expansion, which you guys don't do, how money is distributed, which we talked about. I'm forgetting the third.
So surprisingly, like sales tax expansion, they weren't interested in that. I think they liked the general scope of Stan's bill.
She seemed to suggest that this morning when she talked to us.
Really, our conversations, there was no real drive for sales tax expansion.
I think what they
don't-
really
yeah.
like is additional money to stay in the state budget. And they can still do that. They just got to propose an additional whatever tax somewhere else to bring in additional revenue for spending. You know, which just may happen. I mean, you got a state budget you got to pass, so you got to come up with money if there's a deficit to pay for that. But this is a different issue. This isn't about state spending. To me, they're two different issues. Property taxes are not the same as state spending. You know, it's just like fixing schools. You got to make sure they have the right amount of money. You need to make sure that the whole funding system is fair based upon poverty and growth and sparsity in areas. So to look at one thing as holistic, that's never going to happen. It doesn't happen in Washington. It doesn't happen in Harrisburg either, and it never has happened. So you take pieces and you fix them. It'd be nice if we, you know, I believe we're going to fix the pension system, the state pension system, before the budget's passed. I think we'll get a budget done on time. Whether the governor signs it, I don't know. I believe, and at least I'm very much believe we can pass a basic education funding formula as well this session. Those will go a long way to fixing the problems that cities have, but a lot of other school districts have. But the key is we have to start freeing up the ability of school districts and local governments to manage somewhat. But there also has to be consequences. And that's where the problem has always been in local governments. And we have townships here in York County who owe $30,000 in a pension fund. Why aren't you paying that? $30,000 and you're behind? Why are you not making that payment? You know, because that $30,000 grows pretty rapidly as you don't make those payments, just like when the state didn't do it. At some point, as a township, that's going to be a figure that you're going to have a tough time putting in. So I think, you know, fixing local pensions for the city as well as these townships. But it really comes, you know, again, it comes down to management. Who we elect to public office and how they manage the governments they do, whether it's the school board or it's township supervisors or city council. I think the city council of City of York is a good city council. I got to be honest, I'm very proud of all of them on that city council. You know, I may not always agree with them, but to me, it's probably the best city council we've seen in York City in a long time. I think they're smart, they're making good decisions overall. Like I said, Stan Saylor doesn't have to agree. I don't live in the city, first of all. I don't have to agree with everything they do, but I think they're acting fiscally responsible. And that's the whole thing you want from everybody, is you have so much money to spend. How should we spend it to best meet the needs of the taxpayers? And too many times we've had mayors, and I'm not just City of York, Pittsburgh or anywhere else, who run for office and they say, well, you know what, I need votes, so I got to get the firefighters, I got to get the police on board, so they promise big pensions and big pay raises. You know, Columbia Borough is an example. Columbia Borough Police, from my understanding, makes more than any of the township police around them. You know, so nobody wants to merge and create a regional police department because they're highest paid. And they're asking for a 4% increase in their arbitration hearings a year for the next 5 years. 4%. That's not counting the fact that they only pay like 7% of their health care. So, you know, it's like, where do you as a borough council, cities, whatever, school board, and we at the state are just say, have got to start paying attention to what the real world is dealing with today.
And going back, so I don't think the distribution formula flies within the General Assembly. I mean, with House Bill 504 on final passage, I mean, we had 105 votes, 102. I mean, it's like landing a plane without an engine. Maybe the wheels are up, maybe they're not. I mean, no one knew whether it would pass or not. We're gung-ho, we're going to put it up, we're going to do the best job we possibly can to get this thing passed, and we got 105 votes for it. And that's predicated on everything we did. We added the property tax rent rebate component that was asked from the House Democrats, the governor. And, had the governor come in and said this isn't good enough, Democrats don't vote for it, we would have been out. So, I mean, if you wanted a good example of government working, Republicans and Democrats coming together to work on one of the toughest issues that's out there and come up with a compromise where we got, a majority of members to agree with, I mean, that's significant. I can't tell you how big it is. I went afterwards and shook Dan Frankel and Frank Dermody's hands. I said, this has been a good process. It was open. It worked. We would have liked to see referendum put in there, but we wouldn't have the votes on final passage. So, burden of leadership, you got to give something up to continue moving it forward. So, I mean, it was a lot of work, a lot of conversations, and a lot of bipartisanship combined on that, getting that done.
And I think if this bill were to get to the governor's desk, he gets credit and we get credit. And I say we, I mean Democrats, Republicans, legislators, senators, and everything else. And I think that's the real thing here. And I do think that the governor would like his distribution. I get that. But overall, he's going to get, if this is able to get to his desk, it's going to be a real feather in his cap for 4 years from now.
And there's not 102 votes in the House for that distribution formula. It's just...
So do you think there are any areas where there's room to compromise going forward?
I think generally we're there. I mean, it's really, right now, I think the House did the compromise that the House needed to get the bill done. It's on the Senate's plate. The Senate's going to have to say, we care enough about this issue to move it forward. I suspect Dave Argel will try to attach Senate Bill 76. I think they're going to have a huge discussion over that. I think they're going to caucus it. I don't think there's Senate votes for Senate Bill 76, and I think they'll be looking at what our compromise was and to see where we can tweak things. And I tell you, with 105 votes, we don't have a lot of room off what we passed to really do much else with. So if they come back with tighter restrictions on the back end, I'm not sure we have votes to pass that. So it's gonna be interesting to see how everything works together. And I will say, even with that vote, as far, from our perspective, I think the income tax and sales tax for general fund expenditures are off the table budget time. Basically, House Republicans and Democrats, 105 of us basically said, broad-based tax increases for property taxes, only for property taxes. If you shift that to general fund expenditures, you lose most of those members. So it had major budget implications, but ultimately it's government working. That's how government is supposed to work. People coming together, having conversations, and finding that sweet middle ground spot to move forward with. I can't tell you how hard property taxes is. I cannot even begin to tell you. It is one of the toughest issues.
About it for 20 years.
I know.
30 or 40, I think that's Casey.
So,
And the other thing, too, that's great about this is we had Philadelphia lawmakers, Democrats vote for it, and Democratic lawmakers vote against it. We had conservatives vote against it, and liberals vote against it. We had conservatives and liberals vote for it. So, and again, like I said, it is a very diverse issue. And I think as far as the bill and the governor is input, I think the governor will be very happy if we could get the bill that we reported out of the House to his desk. Again, is it what he would...
So he's not going to, you don't think he's going to push back on anything?
I think I think through negotiation they'll ask for changes. And even in conversations, they kept on coming back. Well, we need the governor's distribution. We don't have 102 votes to do it. Like, if you don't have 102 votes to do it, you can't talk about it. Even if they come back and say, well, let's shave some money off and put it in the general fund, we don't have votes in the House. I'd say out of the 70 odd some members that voted for it, we'll probably lose 50 members. So it really comes back to maintaining those 105. We can give up 3 members basically. and still pass it.
So
So
the
it's,
message is that it's basically this or nothing, basically.
well, I think you can still make some tweaks, but try to curtail as closely to there as you can.
If you talk about distribution, the governor's distribution for me, there's just no votes for it, on the
Yeah.
Democratic side either.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing, is you'll get Philadelphia voting for it, okay, because they love it. They were getting a ton of money out of his proposal. Kevin Shriver's would vote for it, but you're still going to lose 40 Democrats. And with this distribution plan, everybody can go home, even those who voted no, and if it gets to the governor's desk, they're bringing real property tax home. The governor's plan, Stan Saylor walks home and says, well, I gave the city of York 100%, and I brought Redline 15 or 18%. Stan Saylor's not going to be there. And that's why no legislator, no Democrat, well, I shouldn't say no Democrat, most Democrats aren't going to support it. They can't walk home and say, well, I gave Philadelphia more money, I gave Pittsburgh more money, York City more money, but I didn't bring you anything really home. And that's why what we said is that, look, Governor, we understand what you're trying to do. We understand you want to help third-class cities. I would have been a lot happier had he helped more York, or the Yorks, the Lancashires of the world, and hopefully he'll do it through the basic education funding formula when we get to it. But helping Philadelphia, which doesn't, and I don't mean they don't need the money, but who already is a wealthy city, and sending more money down there and say, you know what, we're going to keep the property taxes and the income taxes in Philly low, and we're going to let the people in York City and the Reddings and the Scrantons. I'm sorry, that's just not acceptable to most Democrats, let alone Republicans.
Well, is there anything else you wanted to ask?
I got a technical thing, we can do it
Yeah.
off.
Okay, offline?
Really,
Okay.
it's very technical.
All right. All right.
The vocational technical select, how's progress on those hearings for the select subcommittee on?
Good. We had our first 3-hour hearing, which is grueling. Probably everyone's going to ask you to get off that committee at some point. We have our second hearing coming up in Reading. We're going to focus on higher education. We have a lot of tours set up, and we're making progress. I know from the first hearing, I think there's a huge disconnect, and I liked when Senator Wagner, he kind of did a round table over at HAC, I want to say maybe 2 months ago, kind of brought the Manufacturers Association, manufacturers in schools, higher ed institutions, and there was so much disconnect in that room amongst all those stakeholders groups. At one point, Harley asked a superintendent, do you still have work release? We'd love to get some high school kids into Harley to start training them to refill our upcoming retirements. It blew my mind to think that simple conversation wasn't happening. You know, the chamber is doing, was promoting their 2-year degree emphasis. Manufacturers Association said, you know, oh, we wanted to do that. So even with those two entities, there's not a lot of communication. During the hearing, you have the state level stuff, so you have Department of Ag, PDE, L&I, they have each one's roles to play, and it goes back to the Workforce Investment Board, which is supposed to take that information and distribute and coordinate it with local school districts and career and tech education, lower level, high level, work with different chambers. Our WIB here in New York County is 5 counties. That's a lot of people, and that's a lot of work. So I think there's a communication breakdown between the WIBs, the state, the locals. I think generally we have a good, system. I think that system hasn't been managed properly and worked on for probably the past 20 to 30 years. We kind of let it go by the wayside. So I think a lot of the focus is around what we have. How do we do it better? How do we do it more efficiently? And how do we re-emphasize the need for those jobs into the future? And there may be a role for York City in that career and tech area as well, upcoming.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you
Define WIBs.
so it's a Workforce Investment Board. It was created a number of years ago, and it's kind of the go-between between state government and local communities for career and tech. And again, our local one is about 5 counties that it represents. So you're talking huge population base and a lot of people. We may have to maybe do some redesign of that system that was predicated on probably 1940 or 1950 census data.
And in all honesty, there's a lot of the WIBs that are not working well with schools. I mean, there's not a lack of communications between even trade schools and high schools and everybody working together. I mean, you'd think in this technology age, the communications would be better. It's amazing how much I've discovered as chairman of education in a short period now, how much lack of communications That's one of the things we're really trying to foster. I'm trying to connect now Harrisburg University with York City School District. Philadelphia is supplying a number of students to them, a number of students to Thaddeus Stevens. Here we are, Thaddeus Stevens sitting in our backyard at Harrisburg University, which we in Central Pennsylvania helped create Harrisburg University. That is huge. 100% placement of students coming out of Harrisburg University. Thaddeus Stevens, 97% placement. And the average salary at Thaddeus Stevens is like $62,500. So we need to, again, make sure that schools are connecting with the right thing. But it's also about connecting with parents. And I think that's another thing that schools have, and guidance counselors, career counselors, whatever, have got to help us educate parents that going to York School of Technology is a great thing for your child if they are going into a career. A lot of kids that come out of York School of Technology go on to college. Not everybody. But everybody's perception has always been of the VOTEX, whether it's York or Harrisburg or wherever it is that that's where you send the kids who are problems. That's where you send the kids that are, quote unquote, not totally up to par educationally. And that's just not true. These kids that are going to York School of Technology or any other VOTEX are amazing. And like IT, Harrisburg, they're actually employing, their kids are coming out of Harrisburg University and working for gaming companies that create these video games. That's something they have specialized in, and so on and so forth. So the disconnect, we have to start working with the high schools, 9th through 12th grade, and making sure they have available to them, as well as the parents, the opportunities of what really is out there. Because we have kids going to college. Think about this. You take all the four-year colleges in Pennsylvania, the average is about 30% of those kids in all our colleges and universities get jobs in the field they get a degree in. That's not good. Where when you talk about Harrisburg University, you talk about your college, and you talk about Thaddeus Stevens, you're talking 97%, you know, those kind of things. That's where we have to, and the college universities have to start focusing on that as well. We've talked about that at our, with Chancellor Brogan, about how we have some universities like Clarion, Edinburgh, Mansfield, Cheney that are on the verge of collapse, and they're state-owned. So we've got to start focusing higher ed on, as well, on not training 10,000 teachers for 1,500 jobs.
Do you know we have a special effects school, movie special effects school out in Allegheny County? Doesn't have a single Pennsylvania resident attending it. It's out-of-staters and foreigners.
Huh.
And talk about a cool job field, you know, special effects. We have airplane mechanics. We have one of the last gunsmithing schools, I think in the Northeast or something like that in the state. So we have amazing career and tech schools located in Pennsylvania that are ripe for our students to go to and get out there and find jobs right away. So it's exciting. It's a learning curve for me. It's not a policy area I really delve into initially, but it's such an open door. And I like it because I'm kind of an open slate going into this. I don't have any predetermined opinions whatsoever on it. So hopefully it'll help move it into a direction where we can promote it and obviously match
Let
up
us
those
know,
jobs and
you know,
stuff.
Send
Yeah.
us op-ed pieces or anything we can do to promote that.
Yeah, we'll do.
Great. Well, I appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming and talking to us. It was really
Thank you.
informative. So
Good,
we'll see what
appreciate it.
happens over the next month or so.
It'll be interesting.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.